This video is an introduction to the Unix command line. The shell is the command interpreter. It's the program that you type commands to that causes them to be executed. You might get a shell by logging in some text-oriented way, such as over SSH. Or you might log into a graphical user interface and then run a terminal program, and the terminal program runs a shell. There are many different versions of the Unix shell, but most of them are compatible with the original version 7 Unix shell known as the Bourne shell, after its author Stephen Bourne. In this course, we will be restricting ourselves to the subset of commands accepted by all Bourne shell compatible shells. One command you will use frequently is ls, which shows you a list of files in the current directory. If we want to see the contents of a particular file, the cat command copies the file to the standard output, which by default is your terminal window. Most programs output to the standard output. We can use redirection to change where the standard output goes. If we write cat hello greater than sign new hello, then the cat command still outputs the contents of the file hello to the standard output, but the standard output has been redirected. In this command, the standard output was redirected to the file new hello. That's why we didn't see any output in the terminal window. We can see that the output went into the file new hello by catting the file new hello. Any program's standard output can be redirected. We could redirect the output of ls into a file like so. Again, the output went into the file foo instead of displaying in the terminal window. We use a greater than sign to indicate output redirection. The standard input to a program can also be redirected with a less than sign. But we don't normally call these symbols greater than and less than when we do IO redirection with them. You'll do better to think of them as arrows, and we normally pronounce them direct out and direct in. Suppose I want to create a short file. For example, I'll disable syntax highlighting in Vim because I hate syntax highlighting. I need to create a file named .vimrc which just says syntax off. If I had a command which outputted the line syntax off, then I could write that command directout.vimrc. But that would be a pretty unusual command to happen to have lying around. However, the echo command can do just this. This put that text into that file. Now, suppose we want to copy a file named blue to a new file named red using cat in this way. We type cat blue directout red with a typo. Even though we redirected the standard output, we still saw the error message. The second thing is to discuss how that happened, but the first thing to mention is that this is really quite convenient. If the error message had gone into the file along with the standard output redirection, we might not have noticed. Perhaps we would be confident that we had a copy of the file blue and deleted the original file blue, and been very sorry at some future time when we looked at the file and saw only the error message. What happened is that there are actually two output channels open to a program by default. One is called the standard output, and it is redirected with the greater than sign as we have seen. The other output channel is called the standard error, and it is not redirected by the greater than sign. And the crucial point is, programmers are required to make an appropriate choice as to which output channel to use. Normal output goes to the standard output, but error messages go to the standard error. Here are some basic Unix commands you will use. We've already seen cat and ls. ls shows you the contents of the current directory by default. We can make a new directory with makedir and look at its contents with ls empty so far. We can specify files in the current directory by typing a name which does not contain any slashes. If we do include slashes in the file name, it is a path name saying how to traverse the directory tree to get to the desired file. For example, bloop/example is a path name referring to a file named example in a directory bloop, which is a subdirectory of the current directory. To start from the root directory instead of the current directory, you begin the path name with a slash. The pwd command tells us the absolute path name of the current directory. So we could have used the full path name. If the path name begins with a slash, it is an absolute path name from the root directory. If the path name does not begin with a slash, it is a relative path name from the current directory. We change the current directory with the cd command. CD stands for change directory. The argument to CD can itself be either an absolute or relative path name, as can all file name arguments to all commands. To delete a directory, we use rumdir, but the directory has to be empty. The cp command copies files. Again, arguments to cp are arbitrary path names, as are arguments to any command line utility. The arguments can refer to files in the current directory without slashes, or the arguments can be non-trivial path names. The mv command moves files. It's a rename, but the source and target don't have to be in the same directory. The rm command removes files, deletes files. No error messages means success, as always. Now I'm going to pause recording for a moment to change a few things. Okay, now there is a directory named X with 1,000 files in it. We're done with them all, and we want to remove it all. I think we all understand what's going on here. rm removes plain files, not directories, but rumdir removes only empty directories. So we could remove the files inside the X directory manually, but obviously automating this is the sort of thing computers are good at. There is a -r flag to rm, which means to remove the target recursively as applicable. It can be a directory, in which case everything inside it is removed first, then the directory rumdirred. But it is recursive. If something inside is a directory, it is recursively removed, and so on. So we just want rm-rx. But suppose when we do this, we see this. We can answer y to remove it, but then it's going to ask about the next one. I'm just going to Control-C this. If you see this, you probably have an alias which inserts the -I flag, which means to check before removing. This is useful for CP and MV because it prevents accidental overwriting. Not as useful for RM, but a lot of people still do it. If we type alias RM, we can see what the alias is. We can remove the alias with the unalias command, or we can bypass it just one time by prefacing the RM with a backslash. It's a bit of an odd syntax, but that's what they've chosen. I also created a Y directory with a few files in it. We bypassed the alias, but it's still asking us about one file. Not the first file. It removed most of the files, but it's asking us here because we can't write to the file. But we can write to the directory, so we can remove the file if we want, but maybe we don't want to. It's checking. You can tell RM to suppress all queries and error messages and everything with the -F flag, which stands for force. This suppresses all error messages though, so you don't want to use it indiscriminately. Suppose we want to remove this file red. We typoed red as TED, and we used -F out of a bad habit rather than for any particular purpose. We don't get an error message because -F suppresses error messages. We shouldn't have used -F here. Only use -F for a specific purpose. Usually we want the error message if there is an error. Okay, that's some basic simple use of the command line. You'll also want to become familiar with the programming-oriented editor as opposed to a word processing-oriented editor, and then you're ready to explore the world of Unix software tools.